Hey, look at that. Management has a new album. MGMT's fourth album is here. It's called Little Dark Age. Love that cover. It's so non-marketable and so small label. Two fortunate sons, Ben Goldwasser and Andrew Van Wingarden, met in Connecticut and really took advantage of that golden 4-year opportunity to bring some order out of the chaotic petri dish that is college. The electronic psych pop duo started as a joke, like literally with the first track of their opening album, Oracular Spectacular, called Time to Pretend, with its sardonic goofiness. And pretend they did, straight to the top, with platinum level sales and headlining gigs at festivals. Then, after stuffing 3 of the biggest indie pop songs of the 2000s on the front half of their first album, they strayed from the path of commercial glory with the album Congratulations, which is pretty much indisputably their most complete album. I tend to think of their trajectory as almost the exact opposite of Animal Collective's albums up until Merriweather Post Pavilion. They made the stadium pleasers and the radio hits first, and then moved on to the heady, deep, non-accessible explorations. It's a really unusual career path for a band of this ilk, and also a recipe for losing some fans, like big time. But after a taste of the big time, maybe they realized they actually cared about leaving a legacy behind, something a little more substantial than Kids, which, don't get me wrong, great song. Except I don't personally think the evidence for greatness is there in the album since their debut. Congratulations, it's solid front to back, but it's not groundbreaking, and a lot of the adoration that it amassed is in part due to just the hype and attention of that first record. And 2013 brought the album that sold 60,000 in its first week and 10,000 in the next 18 months. The self-titled record MGMT, it's heady psychedelia, it's like a deep-sea fishing adventure, but with no hook to be found. I really did not end up liking this album very much. I appreciated some of the technical elements and the experimental nature of it, but even that was done no justice at all by this murky, muddled production across the entire thing. And so I was really thrilled to find out that Patrick Wimberly would be co-producing this one. He's worked with Solange, but more importantly, at least to me, he made this album, which is Chairlift's Moth from a couple years ago, I think, and it's just a brilliant and really sparkling pop album. A Little Dark Age leads off with the quirky sort of black sheep of the record. It's called She Works Out Too Much. It is just straight off the Buggles' debut album from 1980. I don't care how ridiculous these workout video lyrics are. I don't want something too serious from MGMT. Like, they're not technically good enough to do this indulgent prog rock sound any justice. They're not King Crimson, they're not Yes. I want some spongy bass, and I want some dreamy synths, some huge choruses, some nonsensical lyrics, and this one delivers. But then immediately after this sort of emotionally detached tune, we get the most serious song on the album in Little Dark Age, so a huge contrast between those first two. And on this song, Andrew makes a case for the archetypal hero myth in dealing with the suffering and the darkness of the world. Don't cower away, don't avoid it, just go out and conquer it. Go slay the dragon. When you get out of bed, don't end up stranded, horrified on the stage. I kind of take that line as you don't have to face the depression or the dark age in your life alone. You can be vulnerable and let other people in so we can fight this together. The vocals are a little bit monotone, a little bit flat, a little bit robotic, but that really works with the underlying instrumentals, that killer bass line and those undulating synths. Great, great track. There are some straight 80s synth pop tracks like the irresistible Me and Michael, which takes me into an Aha record or the world of a John Hughes movie. I actually imagine Maggie Ringwald singing Hunting High and Low. But the moment on Little Dark Age I think is most impressive is when MGMT blends this acoustic instrumentation with the synth pop aesthetic on the song When You Die. There's this great riffing acoustic guitar in the verses, and the transitions in and out of sections are genius. It's such a textured and mature sounding track just from an instrumental standpoint. All the misses for me on this this album land on the back half, which is more Ariel Pink than Ariel Pink himself. Like, you add a few songs from Pom Pom on here, and it really doesn't change much. But the instrumental Days That Got Away is kind of a wah wah. It kind of feels like Toro y Moi's first album all over again, with its lethargic pace and its sleepy, flat dynamic. And the overly simplistic beat on One Thing Left to Try just does nothing for me. Another criticism, I guess, is something MGMT mentioned in an interview, that this name Little Dark Age referenced the state of affairs in the U.S. right now, which, you know, how could they not comment on that as the creative ideologues they are? But it's pretty ironic that in this supposed dark age they're talking about, the most troubling thing they can think of to comment on is how we spend too much time on our cell phones. And the closing track, Handed Over, as pleasant and as sweet as the music is, it really bears MGMT's radical leftist teeth with, you know, the typical partisan demonization. They're talking about rights as if that's what makes life meaningful. It's not. Responsibility, not rights, is what makes life meaningful. At this point, though, I'm kind of desensitized to the ideological puppetry that's rampant in the alternative music world. It's everywhere. Ultimately, though, the music is rich enough to overwhelm all these little faults I've talked about. I'm kind of addicted to this thing. The compositions and the arrangements are much more sophisticated than a lot of the synth pop of the moment right now, like Churches or like Passion Pit or something. I wish it was longer, but this thing is a ton of fun. I'll give it a 7 out of 10. So I think I'm pretty much dead on what the consensus is amongst critics on this thing. It's a pretty fun, pretty enjoyable pop record, so definitely check it out if you haven't yet. And as always, thank you so much for watching.